When a man ignores you, the first impulse is to run after him, to demand an answer, to question his silence, to prove your worth. But the truth is, silence is the strongest weapon you can ever use, because when you do not chase, you shift the balance of power back to yourself. Distance is not weakness. Distance is dignity. It communicates without words that your self-value is not dependent on his recognition. When he withdraws, you do not collapse, you stand taller, because your energy belongs to someone who appreciates it, not someone who treats it as optional. When you hold back and stay calm, you create curiosity. You make him realize that his absence does not break you. Instead, it only highlights your strength. Chasing makes you ordinary, but restraint makes you magnetic. It shows that your presence is a privilege and not a right to be taken for granted. When you stay silent, he begins to wonder what you are thinking, why you are not begging for his attention. And in that moment, you reclaim control of the situation. Your worth does not decrease because someone fails to see it. Your worth increases. When you show that you refuse to bargain for attention, silence allows you to observe clearly. It allows you to see his true intentions, because a man who values you will not stay away for long. He will feel the pull of your absence and be compelled to step forward. If you react with desperation, you train him to believe that ignoring you will make you chase. But if you respond with composure, you teach him that ignoring you will cost him your presence. Your silence becomes a mere mirror, forcing him to confront his own actions, because when someone is met with calm indifference, instead of emotional outburst, they recognize the strength they are up against. Silence is not emptiness. It is powerful communication. It is the language of confidence. It shows you are in control of yourself and not controlled by his behavior. When you choose not to explain or justify, you radiate an aura of mystery and self-respect that pulls stronger than words ever could. A woman who stays still when ignored proves that her happiness is not built on temporary attention. It is built on an unshakable foundation of self-assurance. Ignoring someone who ignores you is not revenge, it is wisdom. It is the discipline of refusing to invest where appreciation does not exist. In your calmness lies your magnetism, because silence is felt deeper than shouting. It lingers longer than arguments, and it plants doubt in the mind of the one who thought you would break. Every moment you refuse to chase, you gain strength. You show that you are not waiting on crumbs when you deserve a feast. Your silence says, I am not afraid to walk away. Your silence says, I am complete with, or without your silence says, I value myself too much to beg. When he sees that you do not collapse, he feels the weight of his absence more strongly, because your calm becomes the loudest sound in the room. It is in that stillness that he realizes the difference between a woman who needs attention and a woman who commands respect. Silence makes you unforgettable, because while others may scream or plead, you remain untouchable, and that contrast burns deeper than any words. Do not underestimate the shock of your calmness, because it unsettles anyone who thought they had power over you. Distance is not rejection, it is elevation. It is you saying, my energy belongs to me first, and I will not waste it proving myself to someone blind to my value. Silence is not a void, it is strength wrapped in grace. It is the ultimate reminder that your power does not lie in chasing, but in choosing who is worthy of your presence. When a man ignores you, the strongest move is not reaction, but self-control, because your stillness makes more noise than your words ever could. Every second you resist the urge to chase is a declaration that your love is a gift, not a bargain. Your presence is earned, not demanded. Your worth is beyond question, not up for negotiation. Silence turns the tables. It takes the one who ignores and makes him question his own importance, because suddenly he feels the loss of what he thought he could take for granted. In your silence lies the seed of respect and the echo of strength, and nothing speaks louder than a woman who refuses to chase. When a man ignores you, the natural temptation is to jump into explanation, to put the truth, to assume the fault. The truth is respect for yourself. It begins with pausing, because of rushing into panic. Because observation reveals the great, as the hidden message, reasons for excellence. When he pulls back, you do not fill the space with noise, you fill it with awareness and clarity, because your strength is not in proving, but in perceiving. You must understand that not every silence means rejection. Sometimes it is a test, sometimes it is confusion, and sometimes it is immaturity, and your power comes from distinguishing which one it is. You cannot see clearly when you are drowning in emotion, but when you step back with composure, you allow yourself to read the reality instead of reacting to assumptions. When he ignores you, do not lose yourself in the storm of questions. Instead, anchor yourself in patience, because true confidence is the ability to remain still when others try to shake your balance. When you stop over-explaining and start noticing, you give yourself the gift of truth, because his actions speak louder than the excuses you create for him in your mind. A man who values you will not make silence a habit. He will not allow days to pass without effort, because absence is not an accident. Absence is a choice. And by pausing, you learn what his choice truly is. When you observe, you see patterns. When you pause, you recognize whether this is a one, time lapse, or a reflection of his character. Respect yourself enough to admit what you see without sugarcoating, without minimizing, because clarity only comes when you allow yourself to witness reality as it is. If he is testing you, your calmness will pass the test, because he will realize he cannot manipulate your emotions. If he is disinterested, your silence exposes the truth, because you do not give him the satisfaction of chasing. If he is immature, your distance shows him what maturity looks like, because you demonstrate emotional control instead of chaos. Noticing is more powerful than explaining, because explanation drains your energy while observation sharpens your vision. When you observe, you to detach from the desperation of trying to be enough and instead become the judge of whether he is enough for you. His silence is not always about you. Sometimes it is a reflection of his inability to communicate, and sometimes it is a revelation of his priorities. And when you pause, you allow yourself to see which one it is. Do not confuse waiting with weakness, because the pause you take is not submission, it is strategy. It is giving yourself time to decide instead of being dragged by emotion. Respect yourself enough to stop chasing answers from someone who already gave you the answer in his actions, because ignorance is also a message. And when you notice it, you empower yourself. When you are calm, you gain vision. When you are desperate, you lose sight. And the woman who holds her composure becomes untouchable, because she sees without begging and she decides without pleading. Your silence is not only a message to him, it is also a message to yourself, reminding you that your value is not measured by how quickly he replies, but by how deeply you respect your own boundaries. When you stop over-explaining, you reclaim your dignity, because nothing makes you stronger than refusing to justify why you deserve love. When you observe carefully, you learn that silence is never neutral. It always reveals something either about his interest, about his maturity, or about his intentions. And once you see it, you can no longer pretend not to. Self-respect means you stop excusing patterns that hurt you. It means you stop creating stories that cover the truth, because noticing reality saves you from wasting years on someone who already showed you their lack of care. Patience is not passivity. Patience is power, because while others collapse under uncertainty, you rise above it with clarity. When you pause, you send the message that you do not need constant validation to know your worth, because your confidence is rooted in who you are, not in how someone treats you. His silence may attempt to confuse you, but your observation brings you certainty, because the more you watch, the more obvious his intentions become. Clarity is your shield and awareness is your weapon, because when you see clearly, you can no longer be deceived. The moment you stop over-explaining, you become free, because you no longer carry the burden of proving yourself to someone who chooses not to see your value. Every time you choose to notice instead of chase, you step deeper into your strength. You honor your boundaries, and you remind yourself that respect is not begged, it is required. The one who deserves you will not ignore you. The one who loves you will not keep you guessing. And the one who values you will not let silence replace effort. When you pause and observe, you gain the wisdom to separate truth from illusion. And that wisdom protects your heart from those who do not deserve it. Clarity is power, and your calm observation is the key to unlocking it. When a man ignores you, the most powerful decision you can make is to take all that energy you feel tempted to give him and redirect it back into your own life, because nothing makes you more magnetic than being fully absorbed in your growth, your joy, and your passions. When you stop waiting by the phone and start living with intention, you send the message that your happiness is not in his hands, but in your own control. Independence is not about rejecting love. It is about refusing to let love define your existence. And when you embrace this truth, you glow with a confidence that cannot be dimmed. The man who thought you would chase suddenly sees that you are chasing your dreams instead. And this shift unsettles him, because he expected you to revolve around him, not around your own life. The more you invest in your purpose, the less space you leave for insecurity. The more you invest in your hobbies, the less time you waste questioning his silence. The more you invest in your body, mind, and soul, the more unstoppable you become. The woman who chooses to rise when ignored becomes a force that cannot be overlooked, because while he withdraws, she is expanding. Every moment you spend creating instead of waiting multiplies your power. Every choice you make to prioritize yourself increases your value, because you no longer appear needy, you appear rare. When you show the world that your fulfillment comes from within, you attract not just him, but everyone around you, because energy is magnetic and self-sufficiency is irresistible. When he sees you thriving without his attention, he realizes his presence is not a necessity, it is an option, and that realization shakes the ego of any man who assumed you would fall apart. Men do not value what is easily available, they value what is complete without them. And your independence proves that you are not desperate for crumbs. You are a woman who can feast alone. When you turn silence into fuel for your own growth, you transform pain into power and weakness into strength. He may ignore you, but he cannot ignore the glow that comes from a woman who knows her worth and lives it loudly. The energy you pour into yourself returns multiplied. It sharpens your mind and it beautifies your spirit. It enriches your life. And that richness radiates in a way no one can deny. Your confidence does not need to be spoken. It is seen in the way you carry yourself, in the way you smile without hesitation, in the way you pursue your goals with unwavering focus. When a man realizes that his silence did not break you, but built you, he begins to question whether ignoring you was his biggest mistake. Independence is not isolation, it is elevation. It is showing that you are whole before love arrives, and therefore love with you is a choice, not a crutch. When you give yourself what you once begged for from him, you stop being at the mercy of his actions. You stop waiting for him to validate you, because your own achievements become your validation. The woman who lives fully becomes unforgettable because her life has depth, beauty, and energy that no silence can diminish. Your independence is your crown, and every action you take to strengthen yourself polishes that crown until it shines so brightly that even those who turned away cannot help but look back. He may have ignored your message, but he will not be able to ignore your transformation, because the world always notices when a woman rises. Your growth becomes your revenge, your glow becomes your answer, and your freedom becomes your greatest attraction. The man who truly wants you will be drawn to that power, not because you begged, but because you built a life so magnetic that he fears missing out on it. Ignoring you does not stop your story, it accelerates it, because you channel the disappointment into becoming the best version of yourself. The woman who invests in her own life is never at the mercy of anyone else's choices, because she knows she is the prize, and the prize does not chase, it shines. Independence makes you unforgettable, because while others shrink under rejection, you expand beyond it. You take the silence and turn it into music. You take the absence and turn it into presence. The moment you decide that your energy belongs to your own growth is the moment you become unshakable, because no man's silence can compete with the roar of your own progress. Your independence is not just for him to see, it is for you to feel, because nothing compares to the confidence of knowing that you built yourself stronger in the very moment someone thought you would crumble. And in that strength lies the ultimate attraction, because nothing draws people in more powerfully than a woman who radiates fulfillment from within. When a man ignores you, the deepest test of your strength is whether you allow behavior, put standards, or whether you rise above it and set boundaries with elegance. Because a woman who enforces limits commands raise respect. A woman who enforces limits with a woman who enforces them losing her voice. When you show through action that repeated ignorance will not be tolerated, you teach him that access to you is conditional upon consistency and respect. Boundaries are not punishments. They are declarations of value. They are the invisible lines that protect your dignity and remind others that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. When you carry yourself with the quiet strength of standards, you shift the dynamic, because he begins to see that silence will not draw you closer, it will only push you away. Every time you accept behavior that hurts you, you train others to believe it is acceptable, but every time you refuse to accept neglect, you retrain them to rise to your level or lose you entirely. A boundary is not built from anger, it is built from self-love. It says, I deserve communication, I deserve effort, I deserve reliability. When he sees you step back, when disrespected, he is forced to recognize that his actions have consequences. And in that moment, he learns that ignoring you is not a strategy, it is a mistake. When you hold to your boundaries, You are not trying to control him. You are showing that you control yourself. And that self-control is what makes you powerful. A man may test how far he can go with silence, but your firm boundary shows him that your patience has a limit, and that limit is defined by your worth. When you calmly step back, you display a discipline that speaks louder than any argument, because you are not proving, you are teaching without words. Boundaries protect your peace, they guard your energy, and they filter out those who cannot meet your standard. When you stand on your worth, you make it clear that ignorance does not make you chase, it makes you choose. And the choice is always in your hands. The man who wants to stay in your life must learn to respect the structure you set, because love without respect is not love, it is manipulation. And you are not a woman who tolerates manipulation. When you enforce your boundaries elegantly, you do not need drama. You do not need shouting your choir. Withdrawal is enough to communicate that you will not compete for attention. Every step you take in protecting your value is a step toward commanding higher quality relationships, because those who cannot meet, you will fall away, and those who can will rise to match you. Your boundaries are the walls of your castle. They do not keep love out, they keep toxicity away. And when a man sees those walls, he either proves worthy of entering, or he walks away, but either outcome protects you. Ignoring becomes powerless when it meets a woman who values herself enough to walk away from neglect. When you remain consistent in your boundaries, you teach others how to love you. You train them through your actions that you expect respect as the minimum, not as a reward. When he realizes that silence only creates distance, he learns that if he wants to keep you, he must communicate with effort and consistency. The woman who sets boundaries becomes unforgettable because she is rare. She is not swayed by excuses. She is not blinded by charm. She is grounded in self-respect. Boundaries are not walls that block love. They are gates that only open to those who bring honesty, loyalty, and effort. When you demonstrate that ignoring you closes doors, you instantly separate yourself from every woman who tolerates being treated as an afterthought. A man may be attracted to beauty, but he stays for boundaries because beauty catches his eye, but standards capture his respect. Your willingness to enforce your limits shows him that you would rather be alone than dishonored, and that choice makes you powerful. Boundaries are the fire that forges respect, because when someone knows you will not bend, they learn to step carefully, to hold you with care, to treat you as precious. When you protect yourself with standards, you teach the world that your love is sacred, that your presence is valuable, and that your attention is priceless. His silence may attempt to weaken you, but your boundaries transform that silence into an exit door, reminding him that if he does not step forward, he will be left behind. Boundaries make you magnetic because people crave what is rare, and a woman with firm standards is a rarity in a world where many settle. Your boundaries are your crown. They signal to everyone that you belong to yourself first, and that anyone who wants to stand beside you must come with respect, consistency, and devotion. When you decide that being ignored is the line you will not cross, you give yourself freedom from the cycle of begging and waiting, and you reclaim your dignity as the foundation of every connection. In that firmness lies your unshakable power, because the woman who protects her boundaries, her soul, and the woman who protects her soul. When a man ignores you, the worst mistake is to fall into pleading and begging for his attention, because a desperation where your value and strips away your power. But the most powerful response to communicate months with a srebel stepple, bow with the most stepple is point. A confident woman does not send endless explanations or chase answers. She delivers her truth with directness and then allows him to decide whether he can meet it or lose her. When you speak with strength, you do not raise your voice, you raise your standard. You make it clear that your time is valuable and your love is not to be wasted. The power of one clear message is greater than 1,000 repeated attempts because it shows you are decisive, composed, and self-assured. A man who is ignoring you expects either silence or desperation, but when he is met with calm clarity, he is forced to face his own behavior without distraction. Your words should not be filled with emotion or fear. They should be filled with certainty and control, because certainty shakes the ground beneath anyone who thought they had the upper hand. When you express what you expect without pleading, you display elegance. You show that you know what you deserve and you are unafraid to say it. Direct communication is not about convincing him. It is about honoring yourself. It is about making sure that your needs are spoken without apology. When he hears you state your expectations with calm confidence, he realizes he cannot manipulate you with silence because you have already claimed your truth. A man may ignore out of ego, but ego crumbles when faced with a woman who is not afraid to stand firm in her standards. You only need to speak once because repetition dilutes your power, but clarity amplifies it. Your directness shows you are not afraid of losing him because you know you cannot lose what is not meant for you. When you deliver your truth with strength and then step back, you create a powerful silence that forces him to choose either to rise to your level or to lose you completely. Pleading makes you forgettable, but clarity makes you unforgettable because it leaves no confusion about who you are and what you deserve. The woman who speaks once with power holds more influence than the woman who explains endlessly because her self-respect is louder than her words. When you speak from a place of calm authority, you remind him that you are not just another option. You are a woman who chooses who gets access to her. Communication with strength is not about winning him. It is about honoring your boundaries and protecting your dignity. Your truth spoken once has more weight than repeated attempts to be heard because it shows you trust yourself enough to walk away if necessary. A man cannot respect a woman who tolerates being ignored, but he will always remember the woman who demanded respect without begging for it. Your voice carries energy, and when that energy is grounded in self-assurance, it becomes unforgettable. It imprints itself into his mind long after the conversation is over. One clear standard is a wall that cannot be ignored. It forces him to either climb to meet it or to admit he is not capable. When you state what you deserve with confidence, you are not giving an ultimatum. You are showing him the reality of your worth. If he chooses to ignore your truth, he reveals himself and saves you years of wasted energy. If he chooses to step up, he proves he is willing to meet the standard of a woman of value. Either way, your clarity